Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today, on the 9th of June, we are going to start a session on learning differences and language instruction. I'll give everyone a moment to join our room and then we'll get started. If you are not familiar with this platform, on the right of your screen, you should see an orange arrow. And if you click on the orange arrow, you should be able to see the questions box and handouts. When you click the drop down arrow, you'll see some options there. So during this session, if you have any questions, please put that in the questions box and I will try and answer your questions. So before we get started, I am going to launch a poll. I want to know who's in the room. You should see a poll now. All right. As is expected, a lot of ESL instructors are here. Thanks for being here. I'm really glad to see instructional specialists and also some ABE instructors. So let me close this poll and share the results. So you see 50% are ESL instructors. Welcome everyone, thanks for being here. This session is about 30 minutes, so we will have some time at the end for questions. Let me hide this poll so you can see my screen and we'll jump right in. So this is the description for today's session. I'm going to highlight some information I learned while I took a massive open online course, aka a MOOC. It was on a topic that I was not very familiar with. Over the years, I have known that there have been learning differences with my students, but there wasn't much research before. And so when I saw this done by Lancaster University, I jumped on it and I did not regret taking this course. So before we jump into the review, this is who I am. My name is Jamie Harris. I'm an education program specialist at the Maryland Department of Labor. And in that role, my specialization is technology integration. I've been in adult ed for over 13 years, mostly in ESOL, but I've also taught ABE, ASC, English as a foreign language, and teacher training courses. I always try and keep learning because there's so much to learn. So let me tell you a little bit about the Massive Open online course. It is done by Lancaster University, and it was done on a platform called Future Learn. Who were the instructors is Dr. Cormos, Dr. Smith, and Dr. Crombie. Dr. Cormos is a professor in second language acquisition at Lancaster University. She's published a lot of research articles focused on dyslexia and foreign language learning. If we look at Dr. Ann Margaret Smith, she's taught English for over 25 years in several countries. She's worked with English as a foreign language, English for academic purposes, and I mean, her credentials go on and on and on. And Dr. Crombie is also a very well-known researcher and instructor in the field of language learning differences and language learning. So, what were the objectives of the course? Really, we wanted to know techniques, teaching strategies, and how we could use this information to be better instructors in the classroom. So before I share, I'm curious what you know. I like to use a tool called Poll Everywhere. And if you're not familiar with Poll Everywhere, that's okay. You could type in the questions box, but Poll Everywhere is nice because when you type in your information, we all will see it on the screen here. So in another window on your computer, if you could type the web address that's listed at the top, pollev.com/JamieHarris229, or you can text Jamie Harris 229 to 22333. And once you join in, we'll be able to see your responses. So what we're looking for here is we want to know, when you hear the word learning differences, what comes to mind? Curious about your experience with learning differences and if there are key words that you know of when you hear this term. I'll give you guys a moment to get on Poll Everywhere. Again, the webpage is POLL. Ooh, that's a good word. POLLEV.com/Jamie, JAMIE, Harris, HARRIS 229. Ooh, I see someone put the word struggle. Growth. Okay. We have someone that put mindset in our chat box. Someone put, Busra put creativity. Okay, we see concerns, academic, varying. I'm just reading some of these words that you can see on the screen. Students, competency, possibilities, linguistic. In the questions box, we also have from Autumn, styles. Wow, these are great words. Perseverance from Anna. Linguistics from Martha. Cultural background from Bishnu. That's a very interesting point you've made, Bishnu, and I'll share why that's interesting later. Janice put dyslexia. And I see another word was added. Let me see. Modalities. Okay, so some people have added more growth, more mindset. Undiagnosed. That's a good word, especially in language learning. Terms, tasks. Okay. Thank you for participating in this. We'll continue to engage with Poll Everywhere as we go through the session. Martha, you also put uncertainties, and Vanessa, you put varying degrees of background knowledge or schema. Thank you guys. I just really enjoy engaging with people I'm in the room with because some people may have more experience than I too. So thank you for engaging here, and we'll continue to engage further on in the discussion. All right, so I'm going to share some vocabulary that I came across in this class, in this MOOC. Dyslexia, and when they spoke of dyslexia, they focused on reading disability, in quotes here. Then dysgraphia, talking about writing disability. Dyscalculia, talking about mathematics or mathematics learning disability. And dyspraxia, which focuses on the difficulties of coordination of movement, maybe writing with the hands and just difficulties with coordination. While the term disability has been used, while the term disorder has been used, most recently they focused on it being a learning difference. And it's interesting because they have stated that they have seen certain aspects of the brain that are different with those who have learning differences than others. And so learning difference is a common term, but what I also want to share with you are some specific definitions from two different areas. The one you can see on the screen, excuse me, comes from the UK in 2005. And I'm not going to read it out loud because you can read. But what I will say it includes reading and writing. It includes manipulating numbers. And then at the end of this, you see the quote, they may also have problems with working memory, organizational skills, receptive and expressive language, or oral and auditory skills, and also maintaining concentration and coordination. I will tell you that that was a surprise to me. I did not even consider that, but as I learned more, it made sense. The next definition comes from the United States, the American, Psychiatric Association, and this was in 2013. And here it talks not only as disorder or learning disability, but it mentions that it's a neurodevelopmental disorder that begins at school age and may not be recognized until adulthood. So some very interesting definitions. And just so you know, everything that's quoted in this presentation, there is a reference page at the end of the slide deck, so you can go and research more if you would like. What I also want to point out is that there are many different theories, and some theories are celebrated, some theories are challenged. There are many, and I am just going to show you two, just so you get the understanding that it is not only reading issues or reading difficulties, that there are many different things that impact reading difficulties. If you look at this double deficit hypothesis theory, you will see that phonological problems and reduced processing speed result in reduced phoneme awareness, results in difficulties in syllabic knowledge, results in reduced phonological short-term memory capacity, and also results in slow decoding mechanisms. So it's not just simple, right? It's not just one thing. There are so many things that impact reading difficulties. If we look at the automaticity deficit hypothesis, we will see that the speed of automation impacts phonological problems, reduced speed, working memory problems, skill development problems. And not only does it impact reading and spelling, but it can impact handwriting and motor skill problems. So for those of you who are instructors, I wonder what's going through your mind right now. I wonder if there are some students that you had and this is sounding very familiar. So what I hope to share today are just 3 takeaways. When I tell you that this course was fantastic, it was fantastic. I only picked 3 takeaways, but there could have been 18, but we don't have time to do all of those. So these are the 3 areas I'm going to focus on. I'm going to focus on how it's interconnected, teaching strategies, and instructional activities. Most of you are instructors, so you really want to know, okay, what can I do now to help my students? So I'll start with the first takeaway. And the first takeaway is that it is interconnected. Um, there are barriers. And what I want to share with you is an analogy that they shared in the course. They said that for you to imagine all of your learners are lined up at the beginning of a race. And the alarm goes off, they start running, and some people run down their lane without any issues. They're very fast, they maneuver well. But there are other learners who are working very hard, they run very fast, and then they come up to a barrier. They fall. They get up again, they try again, but they hit a barrier and they fall again. The spectators on the sidelines are cheering on the learners who are running very smoothly. The spectators on the side are also cheering on those who are hitting barriers and falling, and they're saying, just try harder, just try harder. And that learner is trying harder, but they keep coming up against a barrier. In this analogy, they say that it's as if there are hurdles on the racetrack. And that's why you see this image here. For the learners who go quickly through this racetrack, they're just running. They don't have hurdles. And spectators just see people running. But for those who have a learning difference, it's as if they are running and they have to jump over a hurdle. The struggle is that the spectator is looking on and they cannot see the hurdle. They only see the learner hitting a barrier and falling. And while they are saying work harder, what would be beneficial to the learner is to equip the learner with tools so they learn how to jump over the hurdle. When I heard that, I thought it was such a powerful example. We cannot see all the barriers that our students are facing. And we may say, work harder, but work harder may not be enough. We need to equip our students with tools. Additionally, learning differences can impact social, academic achievements and self-esteem. So it's not only a classroom issue, it is a issue or a challenge outside of the class when interacting with other learners and things of that nature. The other part that was interesting is that sometimes it's difficult to tell the difference between low language proficiency and learning differences. So in the question box, I'm curious if you can type some characteristics of students who have low proficiency and they're trying to learn a language. Think of your own students' examples of what do you see as a teacher when your student is in the classroom and you know that they are trying to learn a language, but they may be having challenges. And for those of you who just joined, if you hit the orange arrow, you'll be able to see the question box and I will be able to see your responses. Okay, we have a gap in schooling from Martha. Disengaged from Hallie. I hope I said that right. Confusion, maybe. Reluctance to speak. Thank you, Kathleen, for that. Michelle, lack of schooling. You said that as well. Afraid to take a risk from Anna. Thank you. Having their mind on other things from Linda. Lack of confidence from Vanina. Carolyn says when they can't read or write in their own language. All right, you're talking about less students. Karen, you said slow or hesitant. So these are great examples. And there's a challenge there for language instructors. How do you differentiate between a learning difference and low language proficiency? Here, Felicia said, students struggle for a word in the dominant language. I have good news for you. You do not have to differentiate between those low proficiency students and those who have learning differences. While it is important, we are not professionals in diagnosing learning differences. And some of the areas in language learning are similar to some of the characteristics or what we see or the evidence we see in the classroom for learning differences or students with learning differences. So one of the takeaways that made me very happy was that there are teaching strategies that can apply across the board. And what you do for your students with a learning difference can still benefit those with low language proficiency. So let's take a look at these. Repetition. Repetition. I don't know if any of you have taken a class and in the moment you understand everything and it just a light goes off. You understand everything, you remember everything, and then 2 weeks later you're like, what was that again? And not necessarily 2 weeks ago, but maybe it was 2 days ago. Repetition for students with learning disabilities or learning differences is very important. Also, small chunks. I know that I have been guilty over the years of giving students 15 or 20 vocabulary words. That's bad practice. It is too much. In fact, they recommend that if you're doing vocabulary words, for example, that it's 10 words at a time. So small chunks. Explicit instruction. So I'm going to define the word implicit, which is the reverse. Merriam-Webster says that implicit means capable of being understood from something else, though unexpressed. We cannot always do this for our learners. And especially when we're talking about learning differences, there has to be explicit, specific instruction. Not everything can be implied and understood just by something else. Vanessa, you put repetition. Retrieval practice is very important. Yes, and even spatial repetition, right? Not necessarily only repeating it 2 days in a row, but continuing to do it over time. All right, so the last teaching strategy I want to show you is multisensory structured learning. This was probably the most emphasized teaching strategy that was talked about in this MOOC. Multisensory structured learning is structured. It is small and cumulative, that offers sufficient practice, frequent revision, explicit instruction, and activates different sensory channels. So I'm going to read a little bit from one of the chapters that was sent in this MOOC, and it says that the multisensory structured learning approach was developed by Sparks et al. In 1991 which was based on Gillingham and Stillman in 1960. And Gillingham and Stillman in 1960 devised a systematic reading instruction program called the Orton-Gillingham approach. You may have heard that before. But what it says is the multisensory structured learning approach um, teaches elements of the second language of the L2, the sound, the spelling system, vocabulary, and grammatical structure through the activation of auditory, visual, tactile, and kinesthetic pathways. And so that's the last bullet point here. It talks about activating different sensory channels. I don't know if you've heard of this before, but it's very effective. And one of the experiences, I have been doing things that are multisensory in my English language classrooms. And I didn't realize that it also benefited those with a learning difference. For example, I purchased some magnetic words a long time ago because it was fun. And I used that often in my classes. So students would create sentences. They would identify what the verb was when I'm talking grammatical structures. They would make it into a complex sentence and then make it back into a compound sentence. And a lot of manipulation, and they actually had to do it with their hands. These magnetic words were also color coded. And so as we continue talking today, we will learn a little bit of how we can take what we're teaching and add some multisensory structured learning components to help our students with learning differences, and also it would benefit those with low English proficiency. So the third takeaway I want to show you are some instructional activities. We're going to look a little bit at phonological awareness, spelling, and music enhancement. So phonological awareness, if you do not know the definition of it, it is the knowledge that spoken words are made of tiny segments of sound. If someone is phonologically aware, they need to be able to identify and manipulate sounds. Sound manipulation includes to identify the sound, isolate the sound, segment the sound, blend them, delete, and substitute. I'm taking another course. One of the areas of focus that I'm researching is LESLA students, and that stands for Literacy, Education, and Second Language Learning for Adults. So it's working with students with interrupted education and very low literacy. And one of the activities we did in this course had to do with phonemic awareness and phonological awareness. In this activity, our instructor had us do some of these sound manipulation activities with Arabic and Polish. I know nothing of Arabic and I know nothing about Polish. All I know is how to say hello in Arabic. I will tell you that that activity was so difficult. And for those who spoke it, they said, "Oh, Dana, I'm so glad you're taking that class." For those who spoke Polish, they were like, "This is so easy. How can you not distinguish this sound from that sound?" But I will tell you, I know Spanish fluently, I know English fluently. I could not identify the sounds. And so we assume our students can identify sounds, but it's a challenge. And so we have to be explicit. And so you'll see here, which this made me very happy, you start with whole words and then you go down to individual sounds. And this works with adult learners because they need information that's relevant for their life now. And so that means whole words, that means vocabulary. Spelling, focusing on spelling patterns that are consistent. So we all know English is tough. We all know that spelling in English is really difficult because there are so many exceptions. But in this course, they said that there are consistency in the spelling of English, of spelling of the English language, and focusing on those consistencies can equip those with learning differences with some information, with a tool to help them start, to help them develop skills for spelling. They also talked about onset and rhyme focus, onset meaning the beginning of the word and rhyme meaning the end of the word, and that rhyming words are helpful. Xavier, I see here you said multisensory structured learning reminds me of UDL, Universal Design, I believe. That's what you mean. Educational approach informed by neuroscience. Yes, that's the beauty of learning about the brain. A lot of what we're doing now can be informed by neuroscience. Okay, so I'm going to continue because time is going so quickly. I had a video here. I will not show it to you right now, but in this video, Dr. Ann Margaret Smith uses music to help students understand. And this activity that she used talked about pitch, and she played music so students could identify high pitch, low pitch, and then she went from allowing students to identify the difference between the two. It was multiple tracks. Then she had students develop the language with one sentence and focused on intonation. So, music enhancement is very powerful when we talk about working with students with low differences and using all of the senses in learning. All right, so I just very quickly, went through 3 takeaways: that they're interconnected, that there are teaching strategies, and the teaching strategies that you employ in your classroom benefit those who have a learning difference and also those who are just low language proficient. So, in doing these strategies and using these activities, you can better equip your students and all of your students. So we're going to take a couple minutes for discussion. I do want to show you some resources at the end of this slide, but I also would love to hear from you. So we're going to do another poll everywhere, and I'm curious, what was new or most surprising from what I've shared with you today? You can open another tab and type in poll, POLLEV.com/Jamie, JAMIE, Harris, HARRIS 229. Or you can text Jamie Harris 229 to the number 22333. And we will see your responses on the screen. If you would like to put it in the chat, the question box, you can do that as well. I can see your responses here. So Janice or Janice, you put that activities will benefit all learners of students. Some of the activities if I had more time, I would tell you is they talk about tokens and slide cards. And I give you the example of magnets or words that are color coded and allow people to manipulate things by hand. They talked about music. Okay. So I'm assuming that nothing was new or surprising, which that's okay. Oh, there we go. The theories that try to explain the source or progression of learning differences were very interesting. When I took this MOOC, I thought, I have been teaching ESOL for so many years, and I did not understand this topic. And in that, there was an injustice to my students. So I thought, oh, I have to share this. I have to share this with everyone. So Martha, music enhanced activities even to lower level students. Vishnu, meeting our students where they are in terms of their previous exposure to content areas of our course. And Vishnu, before you mentioned culture, not every culture accepts or will recognize learning differences. And so when students come to your class, you may need to be aware that they may be reluctant to say anything because culturally it's not accepted or even recognized. Okay, so the next question I have for you is how can you immediately make adjustments in your classroom? Okay, and Vanessa, I think you're responding to the previous question. The definition of learning differences was new to you or surprising. Okay. Using music to learn word intonation. Okay, here we have phonological awareness and continuing to be explicit. I know I have made the assumption that I could be implicit and it would be okay. But some things must be explicit. So for the sake of time, how can you learn more? When you get the slide deck, or if you go in the handout section of the presentation today, you will have access to the slide deck that you can download. The link that says how can we expand our knowledge links to a document that I created based on the course. It has books, articles, websites, and videos that you can use to expand your learning. And also here are the references. What you see in bold is the actual MOOC. So if you're interested in taking the course, you can. It is free of charge. So I hope that you learned something today. Felicia, thanks for putting rephrasing questions, beginning with a student's experience. Dana, yeah, that course was so great. Thank you guys for being here today. I hope you're safe. I hope you're healthy and taking care of yourself. Have a wonderful Tuesday. Today's Tuesday. All right. Bye, everyone.